In this introductory video, we are going to explore the ins and outs of how to create an effective presentation for programs like PowerPoint. But before we get started, here's a really important question. Why do we bother with presentation format? We're familiar with the stereotypical business boardroom where a nervous young employee presents statistics and pie charts, but scholars and experts in other fields also deliver their ideas through slides. For instance, Crispin Davies here is an advanced robotics researcher at the University of Calgary presenting his doctoral research. Likewise, here's a professional movie makeup artist, Bill Munns, adding his expertise to the Bigfoot debate at the 2013 Texas Bigfoot Conference. Most industries or academic fields expect people to pitch their ideas and findings to their peers. So what does this mean? You'll probably have to create a PowerPoint presentation at some point in your life, if you haven't already. Another reason to consider learning about presentation formats is because, surprisingly, public speaking still remains a major fear for many Americans. In fact, we are more afraid of speaking in front of a crowd than of death in closed spaces, according to a Chapman University survey. It can be terrifying to present to a crowd of strangers, no matter how big or small that crowd is, but having an effective visual presentation can support and even boost your ideas. Finally, why bother with presentation formats like PowerPoint? Because the majority of Americans learn best through visuals, according to Pearson Education. Though there are many ways to take in information, visuals will have the highest impact for most audiences. So let's get started. First, we'll look at the two major components of presentations, images and text. We use images not only to reach visual learners, but also to present information with high impact. As the old saying goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And considering that most presentations we deliver are short, images can do a lot of work for you. Images can be anything from photos, to clip art, to charts, to videos or GIFs. They can also provide emotional impact. They can make us laugh, inspire us, and they allow your audience to focus on what you're saying. If you have a lot of text on your screen, like you see here, your audience will assume they need to write it all down and thus will zone out. Your audience will listen to you or read the content, but won't do both well. So if you have more to say, depend on images for support. Let's look at a good example of an image. Here I've included a pie chart, a visual element. I could have said, the majority of students, over half the class, are checking Facebook at this very moment. About a fourth are actually taking notes, and about an eighth are doing homework for another class. But if those are numbers I want my audience to know, then they may miss the specifics as I barrel through my presentation. But the pie chart allows my viewers to catch the gist and jot down notes quickly. So, if text is such a bore, then why use it? To be fair, text is not the problem. Too much text can be. For a visual presentation like PowerPoint, you want to make sure to include the most vital details, because of course text is useful. It can explicitly provide information, opinion, and conjecture. A specific quote, for instance, can also pack a punch and get us thinking. Let's look at an example. According to Frank Camaro, a creative designer, people ignore design that ignores people. I've only included Camaro's quote on this slide because I want to showcase the big idea he's offering. And he raises a good point. Good communication focuses on the people whom we're speaking to. If our presentation is not easy to grasp, if our audience doesn't walk away with our ideas in mind, then we can hardly say the presentation worked. Like you would with a written document such as an essay, you have to think of the basics of your presentation. Ask yourself these questions as you're planning. What is my purpose? Am I persuading, entertaining, or informing? Who is my audience? My classmates and instructor? People who don't know anything about my topic? American voters? And what do they need to know for my purpose to be completed? Finally, what is the best way to present my information? Through text, images, a combination of both? In the process of sorting these questions out, you can plan your slides a few ways. You can write an outline on paper like you would an essay. You can also use post-it notes or note cards to plan out each slide. You may write your main idea for each slide on a note card, or you could sketch out a rough design, sort of like a storyboard. This will help you figure out how many slides are necessary to get your point across. Now that we understand a bit more about the general elements of a presentation, let's talk about content. If you're creating a PowerPoint for class, content is largely dictated by what your instructor requires and the course subject. However, there are three main considerations to make: constraints, order, and polish. Class presentations often have time limits, content focus, and unfortunately, short attention spans to shape them. First, consider what your instructor requires from you. Do you need to include a certain amount of slides? Do you have to present certain types of research, include images? And how much time do you have to present all of that? If you have 5 minutes to explain War and Peace, a notoriously long novel, then your content will have to be short, sweet, and to the point. On the other hand, if you have more time, then you can dig deep into detail. And remember, consider the various ways to display your content. Can a picture get your message across faster? Would an embedded video support your claim better than a picture? Consider these options as you plan. Secondly, order your content in a logical way. If your instructor has certain structural requirements, follow those. In addition, you can consider what your audience needs to know. If you're talking about genetically modified organisms or GMOs, perhaps a definition or history of GMOs is necessary before you can convince your audience that they are not as scary as the media claims. Once your content is laid down and organized, polish is in order. Because PowerPoints are by default a visual medium, consider how the slides look together. This is where a good template can make the difference between a good presentation and a horrifying one. But also consider other elements like spelling and grammar when you use text, transitions between slides, and source citations, which we'll talk about in a minute. So now I want to show you a few example slides to give us an idea of what looks good, bad, and downright ugly. Here's a good example of an effective slide taken from the Hawaii Medical Service Association. We can see a simple design that uses blue, white, and dark gray as its main colors. It also limits the text and uses a high-impact graphic to get the message across. On the other hand, this slide is a sensory overload. Way too much text is used, and the background image makes it difficult to read what's there. A better move would have been to put an image next to a shortened version of the text. And here's the ugly, which is brought to you by a website called How to Create a Terrible PowerPoint Presentation. Again, we can see there's way too much text on the slide. What's more, the title is too informal for its purpose, which is a corporate presentation. Likewise, the cheesy clip art brings down the tone of the slide and feels too childish. Keep these examples in mind as you create your own slides. For our last segment, let's discuss some tips and strategies for making stellar presentations. Your biggest tool for building a great presentation is fresh-looking templates. Templates are pre-made slides that include fonts, colors, and pre-organized text and image boxes for you to use. If you are a deft hand at technology, create your own. But if not, do a search for PowerPoint presentation templates and look for a template that suits your topic. This presentation, in fact, uses a template we found off the web. Whether you're using a pre-made template or have created your own, pay attention to the design features. These small details can make your slides look more polished and professional, which will in turn make your audience want to engage with your presentation. Use icons and background images like we do in this presentation to add small interest points to your slides. Use transition animation sparingly from one slide to the next. If you choose to include them, use a straightforward animation consistently throughout the presentation. If in your presentation you use images or text from other sources, cite everything. For text, you'll use the same formatting in APA or MLA that you would in a paper, where you cite in parentheses at the end of a sentence. For images, you'll include a small text box at the bottom of your slide that says source, and then the appropriate name or article title. For both citations, you'll want to include a works cited or references slide at the end of your presentation to show the full citation. This will help your audience hunt down any interesting sources they may want to use in the future. For instance, this is the works cited slide for this presentation. I've used MLA style to format each of my entries and have cited all the images, quotes, and facts found in my slides. This may seem like an extra or unnecessary step, but it is a requirement and responsibility in academia to credit your sources. And finally, we'll leave you with some resources to help you with PowerPoint creation. You can find free templates and images at these sites listed in the left 2 columns. If you need help with MLA or APA citation, the 3 sites listed in the last column, we definitely recommend. With all this in mind, you're on your way to make an impactful visual presentation. If you'd like to learn more about using PowerPoint or want someone to review your presentation for polish and effectiveness, feel free to contact the studios to schedule an appointment with a consultant.